Dr. Ethan Blackwell, a brilliant research scientist, stood on the brink of a groundbreaking discovery. He had been tirelessly working on a drug that could save humanity from a devastating virus, one that threatened to wipe out half of the world's population. His experiments on monkeys had shown promising results, but just as he was on the verge of a breakthrough, PETA intervened, securing a court injunction to halt his research. Desperate and unwilling to abandon his life's work, Dr. Blackwell made a fateful decision. He would become his own test subject, risking everything to prove the efficacy of his creation. The treatment required 3 injections over the course of 3 days, and he knew that time was of the essence. On the first day, Dr. Blackwell locked himself in his private laboratory and injected himself with the elixir. As the liquid coursed through his veins, he felt a sudden rush of energy, his senses heightened and his mind razor-sharp. But as the hours passed, he found himself growing increasingly short-tempered and irritable, snapping at his assistant, Olivia, for even the slightest perceived infraction. She noticed the change in his demeanor immediately, but remained unaware of the true cause behind his erratic behavior. The second day arrived, and Dr. Blackwell administered the next dose. Within minutes, he felt a searing pain throughout his body, as if his very cells were being rewritten. To his horror, he watched as his hair began to grow at an alarming rate, his nails elongating into razor-sharp claws and his teeth shifting and extending into grotesque fangs. A burning, insatiable itch consumed him from within, driving him to the brink of madness. He tore at his skin, his clothes, anything to find relief from the unbearable sensation. On the third day, Dr. Blackwell realized that even if the drug was making him immune to the virus, the side effects were too extreme to bear. He prepared what he believed was an antidote to reverse the changes, but it only accelerated his degeneration. After the final injection, he found that he was no longer in control of his emotional outbursts, and his skin had toughened, becoming almost rhinoceros-like. He couldn't bear to look at himself in the mirror, horrified by the monster he had become. As he rummaged through his desk, desperately searching for a colleague's number to beg for help, he found a picture of his past fiancée, the love of his life who had died from the very virus he was trying to cure. As he stared at her picture, the visible symptoms of his reaction began to reverse, and his mood normalized, but the reprieve was short-lived. As Dr. Blackwell left his office to head home, his anger was triggered by a minor incident on the street. A passerby accidentally bumped into him, and in an instant, the beast within him was unleashed. With a guttural roar, he lashed out, his claws tearing through flesh and bone like paper. The unfortunate pedestrian was left in a mangled heap on the sidewalk, their blood pooling on the concrete. Dr. Blackwell fled the scene, his mind reeling with the horror of what he had done, but the taste of blood had awakened something primal within him, a hunger that could not be sated. He stalked the streets, his senses heightened, seeking out new prey. As the night wore on, the carnage escalated. Dr. Blackwell's monstrous alter ego tore through the city, leaving a trail of brutalized bodies in his wake. The police were baffled, unable to comprehend the savagery of the attacks. They had never seen anything like it before. Meanwhile, Olivia, growing concerned by Dr. Blackwell's prolonged absence and the disturbing reports on the news, decided to investigate. She made her way to his laboratory, hoping to find some clue as to his whereabouts. As she searched through his notes and files, she stumbled upon a video log that he had recorded during his self-experimentation. Horrified by what she discovered, Olivia realized that Dr. Blackwell had unleashed a monster upon the city and that she was the only one who could stop him. She raced to his apartment, armed with a tranquilizer gun and a desperate plan. When she arrived, she found the place in shambles, with furniture overturned and deep gouges in the walls. Dr. Blackwell, in his monstrous form, was hunched in a corner, his eyes glowing with a feral intensity. Olivia approached him cautiously, speaking softly, trying to reach the man she knew was still trapped inside the beast. For a moment, it seemed as though her words had reached him. The creature's features softened, and a glimmer of recognition flickered in its eyes. But then, with a sudden, violent convulsion, Dr. Blackwell's body began to change once more. His muscles bulged and rippled beneath his skin, his bones cracking and reforming as he grew in size. Olivia, realizing that time was running out, aimed the tranquilizer gun and fired. The dart struck Dr. Blackwell in the chest, but it barely seemed to faze him. He lunged at her, his jaws snapping, his claws tearing through the air. In a desperate attempt to save herself, Olivia grabbed a nearby lamp and swung it with all her might. The base of the lamp connected with Dr. Blackwell's skull, shattering on impact. The creature stumbled, dazed, and Olivia seized the opportunity to fire another dart. This time, the tranquilizer took effect, and Dr. Blackwell crumpled to the ground, his body reverting to its human form. Olivia, her heart racing, approached him cautiously, checking for signs of life. To her relief, he was still breathing, but his pulse was weak and erratic. She knew that she had to act fast if she was going to save him. With trembling hands, she loaded another vial into the tranquilizer gun, but this one contained a different formula, the original virus that Dr. Blackwell had been trying to cure. It was a desperate gamble, but Olivia knew that it was the only way to counteract the effects of the elixir. She injected Dr. Blackwell with the virus, hoping that his body's natural immune response would be enough to fight off the infection and restore him to his former self. For days, Dr. Blackwell lay in a coma, his body ravaged by the battle raging within him. Olivia never left his side, monitoring his vital signs and praying for a miracle. As the two of them sat in the quiet of the hospital room, Dr. Blackwell's mind raced with conflicting thoughts and emotions. Outwardly, he expressed remorse and regret for the lives he had taken, the destruction he had caused. He assured Olivia that he would dedicate himself to making amends, to using his knowledge and skills for the betterment of humanity. But deep within, a darker desire stirred. Dr. Blackwell found himself longing for the strength and invincibility he had felt when he was the monster. The power that had coursed through his veins, the exhilaration of being untouchable, unstoppable. It was a seductive siren's call, whispering to him in the depths of his subconscious. As he lay in the hospital bed, recovering from his ordeal, Dr. Blackwell's mind wandered to the possibilities that his research could unlock. If he could harness that power, control it, he would be able to unleash it at will. He could become the ultimate arbiter of justice, a god among men, deciding who lived and who died. In the privacy of his own thoughts, Dr. Blackwell began to justify his dark desires. After all, the world was filled with evil, with people who caused nothing but pain and suffering. Why should they be allowed to live to continue their reign of terror? With his newfound abilities, he could rid the world of its monsters one by one. Olivia, unaware of the sinister machinations taking place in Dr. Blackwell's mind, simply held his hand, offering comfort and support. She believed that the worst was behind them, that they could move forward and rebuild their lives. But as Dr. Blackwell's body healed, his soul grew more twisted and corrupted. He began to make plans, to plot his next move. He would return to his research, but this time his goal would not be to cure the virus that threatened humanity. No, his aim would be to perfect the elixir that had transformed him into a being of unimaginable power. In the shadows of his laboratory, Dr. Blackwell would work tirelessly, driven by an insatiable hunger for dominance and control. He would experiment on himself, pushing the boundaries of science and morality, all in the pursuit of his dark ambitions. And as he closed his eyes, a sinister smile played across his lips. The story of the modern-day Hyde was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The world would soon tremble before the might of Dr. Ethan Blackwell, and all who stood in his way would face the consequences of his wrath. For in his mind, he was no longer a man, but a god. And gods had the power to decide who should live and who should perish.